Hi there, welcome. Thank you for joining us today for this incredible WeSys webinar. We're so happy to be sharing this space with Cisco, who's been our founding partner and a strong supporter, incredible strategic partner of ours, as they host a panel on the importance of male allies. My name is Lynn Dome, and I'm Women in Cybersecurity Executive Director. We often go by our acronym WeSys, W-I-C-Y-S, as in We Sisters, because that's exactly what we are. We are a cyber sisterhood. So we're a 501c3 member-based organization. We have over 5,100 members comprised of women, men, allies, and advocates, all with a strong mission and passion to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity. We have representation in over 70 countries, over 40 professional affiliates in Africa, Australia, Canada, France, India, Pakistan, the UK, and all throughout the United States, in addition to 140 student chapters in Canada, Costa Rica, India, Nigeria, and all throughout the United States as well. And since our mission is to recruit, retain, and advance women in cybersecurity, we do so by creating opportunities. We have an online member forum where all our members network and connect. And in that online member forum, we have special interest groups such as neurodiversity and cybersecurity, military spouses and cybersecurity law, data privacy. You name it, you could have your conversation in those special interest groups or launch your own special interest group. We have many different skill development training programs, like the Security Training Scholarship made possible by Google, Bloomberg, and Facebook. AWS builds out a roadmap. Target funds gamified cybersecurity challenges. All our strategic partners put forth their resources and their knowledge and skill sets in developing these programs for our members to upskill and up-level themselves in their careers, preparing them for their next level of advancement. We have newsletters, webinars, scholarship grants and awards, not only for our conference, which is coming up March 17th through the 19th, but also many other conferences as well. Our Cyber Talent Emergency Fund is to show that financial support to students that have medical emergencies or they can't afford their car payment. We don't want them to be derailed from their cybersecurity studies, and we want them to make that impact and get into the workforce as quickly as possible. So those students can apply for the Cyber Talent Emergency Fund and receive up to $599 within 48 hours of applications. Our speaking and media opportunities, our mentor-mentee program, Speakers Bureau, and so much more is there for others to see what they can be as we're building up the capacity. And last but not least, our Job Board Plus Plus is for all our strategic partners, including Cisco, to post all their jobs. And they can recruit from the contact database, the resume database that's in the Job Board Plus Plus. So we have these initiatives and many more training programs on our website. We'd love for you to just go over there and check them out at wesys.org. We owe all this special thanks to our strategic partners, and I am going to read them all. It is a mouthful, so hang on tight. We have AWS, Bloomberg, Carnegie Mellon Software Engineering Institute, Cisco, which brings us this incredible webinar today, Facebook, Google, Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Optum, AbbVie, JP Morgan Chase & Company, LinkedIn, Navy Federal Credit Union, Nike, Sentinel One, Wayfair, Workday, Accenture, American Airlines, Berkeley College, Dell Technologies, Envestnet, Flatiron, Fortinet, Haystack Solutions, Here Technologies, The Home Depot, IBM, Indiana University, MITRE, Motorola Solutions, Oak Ridge National Lab, Palo Alto Networks, PayPal, Salesforce, Sands Institute, Schlumberger, Smooth Stack, Spiritip, Starbucks, Target, University of California, San Diego, and Verizon. I know we have 47 strategic partners now. Some of them aren't even their logos aren't even up on this this image here yet. So it's great to see the growth of those that are actively engaging in the inclusion and the diversity efforts in the cybersecurity workforce. So thank you. And so today we're going to be moderated by Veronica here from Cisco. She has an incredible panel lined up, great questions to ask. And so I want to encourage you all, the audience, to ask your questions. This is your time to gather this information and make an impact on how you want to serve the cybersecurity community. So with that, if you're not already a member, we'd love for you to join us or subscribe to our newsletter. We're all over social media, so continue to engage from here on moving forward with this WeSys community. So without further ado, I would like to hand it on over to Veronica for her to take the panel discussion from here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. As mentioned, we have a great panel lined up today to discuss the importance of male allyship. When I introduce the team, I want to do something different and share an important or interesting fact about them. So I'm Veronica Toscano. I'm the Chief of Staff for the Privacy Office at Cisco. Interesting fact about me is that I backpacked through Europe by myself. And on the line, we also have Daniel DeSantis, the director of Cisco's Advisors for the Americas. If you could just do a quick hi, Daniel, so everyone knows who I'm referring to. An interesting fact. Actually, when Daniel shared this, we're like, oh, well, that's really interesting. He used to be a geologist and spent the better part of a year in the backcountry of Utah mapping rock formations that had never been mapped before. That's pretty cool.
It's a great time.
And then we have Pam Linda Moan. She's a Chief Information Security Officer Advisor at Cisco. And this one's near and dear to my heart. I love that she shared this. At the age of 47, she adopted a son who is now 3 years old. And then lastly, Stephen, not to be confused with Stephen Curry. We all know that's just as familiar. Who's a field security architect with Cisco App Dynamics. And cool, interesting fact is Stephen was recently scuba certified. Awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, fish don't carry COVID. So I thought, let me go hang out with them.
Smart play.
And if you like sushi, it's super fresh.
There you go.
All right. So with that, I'm just, want to open it up with discussing with, people in the audience. The title is The Importance of Male Allyship, but I also want it to be known that it could be male, female, as well as they allyship, just making sure you have that allyship, but sticking to the subject. I want to hear from each of you, starting with Daniel. Why is this an important subject for you? Like, what brought you here today?
And there's a couple of answers or responses I would have for that. First and foremost is I have a daughter, and I don't want there to be any limitations for her. And so I am an ally for Natalie, and I just want her to make sure that she realizes that there's nothing she can't do, there's nothing she can't go after, and it's okay to take risk. So which I think is an overarching theme I've heard over and over again with a lot of the women I've had the privilege to work with is that don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Pam and I have done some video series called Journey of the CISO and a number of women that we've interviewed. And that was a reoccurring theme that I heard from many of them when we asked them, if you can go back to your younger self, what would you say? And it's like, don't be afraid, take a risk, put yourself out there. So for me, I think that's obviously one of the things that's driving me as I'm really passionate about, not only my daughter, I have nieces and others, but I've also been the beneficiary of being an ally. I don't know that I realized it was an ally, by the way. And I know we're going to talk about conscious versus unconscious decision making here. But for me, it was always about just encouraging diversity and having diverse thinking and approaching problems differently. And again, I've had a great privilege to work with a lot of amazing women, and it often brought diverse thinking. And so when you're a leader, especially, we all know that you surround yourself with people that are a lot smarter than you. So it's quite frankly, I'm just to net it out, I'm very selfish. Yeah. So.
Thank you for that. Pam, Daniel mentioned, I do want to touch why the importance of male allyship, for you, but I also want to gain your insights because, he mentioned how you two work closely together, the impact that his allyship has had on you too. If you could touch on both, why you're here and the impact it's had.
So another interesting fact about me is I'm an introvert, and not a lot of people know that about me because I'm a high functioning introvert, and Dan has this really incredible way of pushing me in a very kind and supportive methodology that he uses, and he pushes me out there, and I can tell you that I've been privileged to have a lot of male allyship in my career, but Dan is like no other. He is very kind and basically just shoves me out there and says, "You can do it, go." And today is an artifact of that. He basically drugged me along with. I'm like, wait, I'm not a guy, remember? But my perspective to offer today is one that's unique and is profound, and he sees that, and he just drags me along every time. And sometimes I go with apprehension, and I'm like, wait. And he's usually very kind and very motivating, and he usually says to me, like, you have a perspective that people need to hear. And I need you there. Like, they don't want to hear me talk. He said that to me several times, right? So having someone really push you when you need to be pushed in a very kind way is super important.
And it's so fun to watch.
Yeah.
I'm having a time of my life.
And Daniel, thank you so much for pushing Pam, because I it's just been great to get to know her as we've been prepping for this event. And Stephen, coming to you, why are you here? Like, why do you think male allyship is important?
Yeah, well, I think about my own journey as an ally. I mean, I've always been interested in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and but I feel like my allyship journey really began at Cisco. I remember it was in my new hire orientation. This is just a few years ago, about 6 years ago. They emphasized Cisco's employee resource organizations, and the person teaching that training said that you don't have to be a member of a particular social group to join that ERO. You don't have to be a woman to join the women's EROs that we have. You don't have to be Black to join our Black professional network. I took that as kind of an open door to get involved with any community I saw as underrepresented within the tech field. And it just led to lots more engagement and involvement over the years. That's just been, again, very, as Dan said, it's been very personally rewarding for me. Within probably a year of joining Cisco, my director was calling me the mayor of InfoSec because she said, everybody knows you. How is this possible? And it's funny because I also identify as an introvert. I got involved as a way to kind of pull me out of my shell, and the EROs had been a great way to do that. But just very impactful opportunities that I found through just ERO engagement. Cisco even has a male allyship network called Men for Inclusion. That's been a very great way to kind of pull our resources, pull together people of with this kind of a shared passion for this, and help drive more change across the organization.
I love that you mentioned the story about being the voice for underrepresented communities. When you first shared that with us, it reminded me of Rihanna. I don't know if you've ever been compared to Rihanna, but it reminds me of her.
There's a resemblance.
She, at her NAACP acceptance speech, she talks about building and bringing people and communities together. And she mentioned pull up. If you have a Black friend and they're having a problem in that community and they're your friend, then it's your problem too. Pull up. And if you see, like in this situation, a woman who is not being heard, her voice is not being heard, pull up. Like, what can you do to show that allyship? And just building off that, if you are in a meeting, when, you hear a woman say something and then it lands on deaf ears, but then a male says it and it's like, it's the most brilliant idea ever. Like, if you're in that meeting, like, what do you suggest other people can do in that situation? That are in the audience, that are not the person that said it and is the male who just said it. Whoever wants to take that question, please.
I'll jump in. This is something that I've been thinking a lot about when we talked about the difference between unconscious and conscious decision making. And for me, I sit back and think, okay, well, what is it that I can do? What are some of the things I have done? And to your point, it wasn't so much that a woman said something and nobody listened. It was more the case of a woman was talking and then somebody stepped on her during the conversation. And so, she's halfway through her thought, and then, one of the men on the phone jumps in and starts picking it up and expanding on it before she's even really got her idea out. I think that's an opportunity, irrespective of whether or not you're a leader, but as an ally, to jump in and say, hey, hold on a second. Pam was in the middle of what I think is a great thought. I'd love to really hear her say that thought, and let them know that you're calling them out, by the way. That's not acceptable behavior, number one. Number two, she really has an important contribution to make. And I think, to your question, the only thing that I would add to that is when a woman says something on a call, I would argue that you apply this to anybody. And if nobody listens, nobody chimes in and acknowledges that, this is an opportunity for us to all step in and say, I want to reflect that back to the group here. What I think I just heard is this, and maybe Pam said something. I said, Pam, I want to make sure I understood this correctly. Could you reiterate that? Would you mind expanding on that a bit? I want to make sure that everybody walks away with a complete understanding of what you said. I think that's where we can play a powerful role.
I love that. Just reiterating what she said, Pam, back to your point, what you just said, and then just building off that. Love it. Pam, you've been on the other end, I assume. You've had this happen to you. Like, what do you do in that situation?
I've learned that a little drop of honey goes a long way. Probably one of the best things my mother taught me is to be kind. And, I'm not always kind, and I have to apologize a lot. I have in my career. And I would just say, like, you've got to stand up for yourself, and it can be intimidating. I started out my career, and I was typically the only woman in the room, and it's very daunting. But you surround yourself with people that care about you and that you care about. And if someone disrespects you, if someone steps on your statements, you've got to stand up for yourself in the moment more often than not, because people are going to walk away from that meeting and or experience, and you're not going to have your opportunity. So sometimes I have been known to stop people in the middle, and it comes across as abrupt, abrasive. I could name the names that people have mentioned after Linda Moan, but I step into the light because it's important for all of us to be heard. And it's not just women, it's people of color, people of different nationalities. It's everyone needs a voice. And I do mentor a lot of young women. And that's the one thing that we talk about over and over and over. And here's some advice that I can give you that I got from my mentor is have your phrases ready and practice them. Because if you have them ready and they're practiced, you'll have more confidence to speak up in the moment. But people are going to respect you more if you step into the light and you let your voice be heard. So get a coach and a mentor, maybe a champion to help you with some of those phrases too. People with experience.
Can you share an example of what do you mean when you're referring to have those phrases ready? What are some of the phrases that you have ready?
Excuse me, I wasn't finished.
That reminds me of, the famous Kamala Harris when, excuse me, I'm speaking. I really, after that, I really just felt so empowered. Like, it's okay. It's okay. She was on national TV. She said this, and it just empowered so many shirts, so many women, and you're absolutely right. And I love, thank you for sharing that phrase and empowering those on the call that, experience this, because it does happen. And to Daniel's point earlier, it doesn't just happen to females, it happens to males and theys. So thank you so much for that.
I will say this too. People who have known me in the industry, I can be pretty strong and pretty vocal, and you would not see me as an introvert. It's practice. I got that from the same mentor, a woman who is incredible. Practice. And if you need to practice, find someone to practice with, because it's going to happen to you.
Yeah. And we talk about mentoring, and Stephen, I noticed, you've done a lot of work with mentoring. and creating allyships with multiple ethnicities. We talk about the Black college professionals, Conexión, which is the Latin ERO, CAN. What is some of the advice? Because one of the questions that did come in is like, do you think allyship crosses ethnicities and race beyond gender? And I just felt
Absolutely.
that was a great answer.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I mean, some of this gets into, if you think of the concept of intersectionality, that people are bringing different backgrounds, multiple backgrounds, and all of that's important. I think while my involvement at Cisco has been a lot of cross ERO type work. And so I'm on the core team for a few different EROs besides Men for Inclusion. And there are often opportunities for us to collaborate on events. I think that's been real key. Even if you look at the last year, there have been opportunities that EROs have driven, that Cisco has driven internally for, like bringing the Asian and the Black communities together, for conversations, for healing, for that type of work. So it's a broad topic. I think there's a lot of different ways. It's specifically what you were mentioning was an opportunity we were doing, talking about our college recruiting strategy. And there were 5 target schools that were listed as where we were focused. And none of those schools at the time had a great representation of Black or Latino student population. And so it was just an opportunity to kind of speak up and say, question how we were targeting, where we were recruiting, those traditional statements you'll hear from people. Oh, hey, we got the rec open, tell all your friends. And it's like, that's not the best way to recruit. That's going to get us more of the same. That's going to get us more of what we have today. We need to be always looking at new places, and sometimes it might be the ally in the room who is expressing that point.
Wow, I never thought about what you just said. It's getting us more of the same when we're recruiting within our friend circle. Wow, thank you. And just going back to our dry run, one of the stories that I absolutely love that Daniel shared is you opened a requisition. Actually, let me just have you tell the story. It's your story. Go ahead and tell it before I even try.
Well, there's a couple of examples of this, and I'd love to tell you that this was an epiphany on my part, but it was just ultimately deductive reasoning, and then beyond that, I met with some women, and they educated me on this. A number of them are chief information security officers. So a while ago, I've opened a couple of recs in my time, and the first time around, we didn't have a lot of women applying for the job. And so I went to HR, and I'm like, what's going on? I mean, why is it just, there's 49 men and 1 woman that are applying for this? Is it just that they're not interested? And so again, it took me, because I'm a slow thinker, I needed to kind of process this. And I talked to some friends, a number of them who are women, and one of whom is African American. And I asked her, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, have you encountered this before? And she's like, your rec isn't written right. And you need to give a lot of thought to how a woman will interpret a job requisition. And she gave me the very simple example of if there's 10 items, and many of you probably have heard this before, if there's 10 items that are prerequisites for the job, a woman will look at that and say, well, I might be able to do eight of those. So I don't feel comfortable applying. I'm not going to put myself out there. And again, I realize I'm generalizing here, clearly. Mm-hmm. But the comment was, a man will look at that and say, I think I might be able to do 5 or 6 of those. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to take a risk. And it's just a different way we approach things. And I'll tell you, I've been that way my whole life. I mean, it's like, wow, okay. In my case, it's more like, I think I could do 2 or 3 of those things. And I'm still going to take a shot at it. But that was, for me, an epiphany. And I've learned since then, and Stephen, thank you for sharing this earlier. I think it was you that mentioned that there are now technologies, tools that can help with this, Textio among them, that will look at the syntax, will look at the way that job requisition is being written, and ensure that it's also nuanced in a way that both men and women will be encouraged to apply. Having said that, and I think this is a testament to Pam and the allies that she's had in her past, is again, we opened a rec for the position she now occupies at Cisco. And even with all the technology in the world, we still didn't see a lot of women apply. And so, but her job application stood out. I mean, it really stood out. It was, she wanted this job. She wrote a business case. She approached it with zeal and said, this is who I want to be, and this is the company I want to do it for. And she separated herself from 49 other security executives that applied for the position that she's in now. And so I think that really gets back to, she's outside of just who she is as a person. And Pam, keep me honest here, I think a lot of this is just has tied back to the allies that you've had to help support you to go out there and take a risk and be bold. And that came through in your job application in flying colors. So hopefully that helps, Veronica.
And yeah, especially the point that you said that really stuck out is sometimes I only qualify for 2 things and I still apply. And I'm like, write that down, Veronica. Remember that next time you see a job description, girl, like only 2, you can go ahead and apply, shoot your shot. And Pam, just one of the things Daniel touched on is also something that Sheryl Sandberg touches on, that, women only apply when they meet 60 to 70% of the requirement, or 100% of the requirements, and men will apply only when they meet 60 to 70% of the requirements. So when you saw this job description or any job description, has there ever been that self-doubt in your head? Like, I don't qualify, I don't want to apply. And then if so, how do you overcome it to actually just be like, you know what? I'm going to shoot my shot and try. What do you tell yourself?
Yeah, this is an interesting question for me, because most of the jobs that I've had throughout my career, I've been plucked from other areas. Like, people see me, they find out how my work ethic, what I do day to day, how I put my heart and soul into it, and that comes from my mother. My work ethic is fairly strong, but this is the first job that I've applied for in a long time. And I applied all on my own. And I saw the job description and I knew I wanted it. I'd been looking for this type of role for quite some time. And Cisco was the place I wanted to be. If, quite frankly, I want to give back to the security community in a way in which I think Cisco is doing today. And I want to be a part of that. So Dan's right. I put my heart and soul into the application process, and I was not going to let go. And that's my recommendation: is you put your heart and soul into something, and you can outflank everyone if it's what you want. I certainly have had a lot of people that I've worked for say, I'll be working for you in a few years. And that's just work ethic and just a strong will to work hard and to get ahead. It's determination, it's dedication, it's loyalty, whatever you want to name it. But I've been successful based on that. And I have had a lot of people teach me. I have listened to, I think I've only worked for 1 female in my entire career. So I've been listening to men. I've opened my heart and my soul to men throughout my career. And thank goodness that they've all been very smart, very kind with their time. And they've taught me, because they taught me things that I did not learn by reading a book. So just aligning yourself to the right people is crucial. I've had a lot of women giving me advice in the past 5 years in terms of how I can help back with the female community. So I think you got to go for it. You got to kick the door in.
And you mentioned you've had a lot of people help you along the way. Mm-hmm. How did those relationships form? Did you ask for it, or, how was it formed?
How
was that support system built?
I think it's all about partnerships. You give to people and they will give to you. And I truly do believe in that. I read a book by Tim Sanders, Love is a Killer App. a long time ago. And it was all about doing good for other people. You get it 4 or 5-fold back. And I've really just lived by that principle. Like if I help somebody, maybe they'll help me someday. And it's worked out for me in that respect.
Thanks. And switching to you, Stephen, just want to kind of get the other perspective. Steve Harvey has this book, I believe it's called Think Like a Man, Act Like a Lady, or Act Like a Woman. So, we talked about women will only apply when they meet 100%. But how about from a man's perspective? And when you look at that job requisition and you only meet 60 to 70%, what do you tell yourselves to say, you know what, I got this, I'm going to apply? Like, what goes on in your head to not say no, I don't qualify?
And it's a very good question. And I don't know if I'm the best to answer, because I do think that I'm one of those people who tends to focus on my limitations. I've been told I can be overly self-critical. But yeah, there's general advice that works for everyone, but I think it kind of comes back. In fact, I heard somebody once, we were talking to a group of young girls, and she said specifically about this, as you are going into the working world, if you see something that it looks interesting, but you don't know if you can do it, go for it. I mean, what's the worst that can happen is they say no, they move on, but people do often take chances. Very often you hear from hiring managers that we're focused on, you can train people's skills. You can't necessarily train people to be enthusiastic, to have high energy, to be positive. Some of those are vitally important if you're building a team. I'm just an individual contributor, so I kind of work at a different level than say Daniel or Pam. I'm working at more maybe a grassroots level, I guess. But that general advice, I think, works for anybody who can be self-critical. If you're looking at a job requisition, just go for it. I mean, what is the worst that can happen? If nothing else, if you get an interview, even interviews are good practice. So you can build up those skills, get feedback on your LinkedIn, your resume, things like that, and improve yourself for the next opportunity.
Stephen, go ahead.
I was going to say, there's this woman, her name is Fran Jerry. She was the president of a division at Anthem, and she was incredible. And you know what she said? It's kind of to Stephen's point. She was like, go sit beside somebody and learn the job you want to do. Like, show people you want that job, and show it in a way where you show up and you're expressing that. And I thought that was super valuable, but it's kind of to your point, Stephen, like, do it in your spare time, right? Like, show them that you want it and go after it.
Yeah, and I'll share on that, just on that line of questioning, Veronica. I learned a long time ago that with judicious risk could also bring reward, and so I kind of got hooked on that. Probably it's ultimately how I transformed from being a geologist to being an internet guy back in the late 90s. And I realized that I can go and take a risk, and if I put hard work in, I committed myself to the endeavor, there would be a reward that would come with that. I'm also a firm believer in my children are Montessori children, and they really believe in skinning your knees, this notion of learning. And in fact, there's a book out there called Black Box Thinking that a lot of folks here at Cisco and our InfoSec team are reading. It's by Matthew Syed. Wonderful read. And it's basically, hey, failure's okay. I mean, don't keep on doing it over and over again. Learn from it. But that's how we grow. Pam and I are involved with a masterclass we have inside Cisco here for our security teams, where we're doing role plays. And we actually had a very interesting experience. We're doing a workshop coming up here soon for a bunch of CISOs, and we had a number of those CISOs from names that I if I mentioned them on this call, you'd all be familiar with. And it was really great because I saw true authenticity with a couple of these folks. They were really nervous about a role play, because we're going to do a role play. We're going to put them outside their comfort zone. And it was a mix. It was actually 50-50 men and women that were involved with that. And they're like, whoa, what do you mean we're going to do role play? So I found that I think I got hooked on that cycle of okay, if I take some risk, I'm going to evolve. I'm going to be better. And that's how I'm going to grow. That's how I'm going to develop. If I get this uneasiness in my, it's sort of like stage fright, but you got to put yourself out there. That's how you develop your craft. So, you know, and I think when I think of Pam and her approach to getting the job and ultimately the work she's done thereafter, I see that behavior. We're building something here, the team that Pam and I are on. And so we're reaping the rewards. You know, we're skinning on our knees along the way, but it's extremely satisfying, and I love watching the process associated with it.
I love everything you all said, especially the sign behind me is be the girl who just went for it. And for me, that equates to just shoot your shot. The worst they're going to say is no. And I'd rather have them tell me no than wonder in my head the rest of my life, what if I would have, what if? Because to me, that's just going to eat at me more than just, I would rather just hear no. And another piece, if, you know, just echoing, I think it was Stephen, you said at the end of the day, if you don't get the job, it's good practice and it's going to prep you for that job that you want, that job that will be yours. Something else that came into our queue that I definitely want to get to, and I think it's important, is creating safe spaces in allyship. You know, I admire Pam's courage to speak up and say, excuse me, I'm not done, right? But other people may not be as courageous. So how do you go about creating that safe space? Open to anyone.
Well,
Yeah,
I
can.
Go ahead, Stephen.
It's just, I think it's got to be fairly intentional because it doesn't always happen by default. And so I think you can declare a safe space as you're beginning a conversation. But I think it is kind of a conscious effort throughout a conversation to make sure that voices are being heard. If you see people are being quiet, calling them for input and feedback is important. I think it just kind of has to be intentional. There's some really good online references for how to declare something a safe space for conversation, for opinions, that you can find. And just, I think, putting that forward up front to make it clear that, look, this is what we're driving for. This is what we want to have here. And then, you know, from there, it's, you know, kind of making sure to manage that conversation in a way that everybody is being invited and encouraged to participate. Daniel, go ahead and feel free to.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think a lot of this comes down to trust and respect. Whether you're running a team or you're a colleague, having that rapport and open channel communication, openness is important. To the point, you know, I made this point earlier about making sure that when somebody is on a call and they're speaking, and you know, we pay respect to, we're respectful of what they have to say and their thought process. I also think it's making sure that folks always know that there are avenues to have conversations, that they don't feel, especially if you're a leader, maybe you haven't got to a point in your relationship where, you know, as at your business relationship, where there is that trust yet, where there is that respect, making sure that they know that they have avenues, that there's folks that they can work with and talk with, whether it's HR or employee relations or what have you. So making all of that stuff accessible. There's a lot of, especially when you come into a big company like Cisco, it's easy to get lost, and it's like, okay, well, I'm not feeling, maybe heaven forbid Pam ever felt like this, I don't feel like sharing something with Dan right now, and she needs to know that she has avenues to communicate, and I need to make sure as a leader that she's aware of those. So I think that's one way we can be intentional, to your point, Stephen, make sure that the folks know it's a safe environment. I also think, last thought on this is that, and again, this is almost irrespective of gender, but let's treat humans as in an ethical fashion. Let's be good, moral, upstanding citizens, right? And you know, I've seen a bunch of guys get together, and there's, you know, certain banter that I don't feel is appropriate. And so I think, you know, you have an opportunity there to say, hey, listen, guys, and let's just think about our surroundings, have situational awareness, and be respectful of everybody else here. whether you're a leader or even if you're just one of their peers. So I think that's another way that we need to be intentional and respectful. Again, whether or not it's a man or a woman, we should really just treat each other with dignity.
Thank you. One of the things that you said that stood out to me was leadership and making sure that leaders are aware of this, because as a leader, you always want the best interest for your team members, and just making sure that they have that safe space. If they felt that someone interrupted them or what they said landed on deaf ears or just uncomfortable, that space is there for them to be able to share whatever they may be going through, if not have the resources available. And Stephen, first thing that comes to mind is that male allyship ERO that Cisco has. For other companies, they may not have that. How do they go about starting that at their company?
No, thank you for the question. Through Men for Inclusion, I actually had the opportunity to go to the Grace Hopper celebration a couple of years ago, and there were several events there talking about male allyship. And I was there with some other folks from Cisco. We were able to talk to people in other organizations who were really interested in that because they didn't have it. Every organization may have a different process for starting some type of an employee group. Cisco is very supportive of kind of grassroots organizing, that type of thing, just almost any interest people can pull together. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but one of the driving underlying factors behind Men for Inclusion was a survey that a vast majority of men were feeling left out of diversity, equity, and inclusion conversation. And so these are people who want to be allies. They didn't necessarily know how to get involved. And that's a big part of what Men for Inclusion is about. It's not so much trying to persuade people to be allies. It's saying, hey, we know you want to be an ally. Here's some ways that you can do that. And there's a lot of different ways to participate. If you're in an organization that doesn't have one, you may be able to start your own. You may be able to find those people that you see as a potential ally through their involvement in just other corporate activities. You may see people either in leadership roles or individual contributors who are volunteering or active with different communities and different diversity efforts. You could approach them and just say, hey, do we have an ally network here? If not, is this something maybe we could get started? And I would say, feel free to reach out to me, say on LinkedIn or whatever. I would be happy to talk to anybody more about, just the story behind Men for Inclusion and how we got that started here.
Stephen, I'll throw the same out to the audience. Happy to always connect on this. I was inspired by a gentleman who was on my team in a previous role, and he is, I think, an excellent example of an ally. But he was also doing a lot of bridge building outside of the company. And one of the things that he pulled me into, and we ultimately sponsored, was an event in Ohio that was a Raspberry Pi competition for high school, just tied to a STEM thing, and it was for girls. And there were you won some prizes. I think it was the actual Raspberry Pi, or maybe it was a laptop, I forget. But he had asked me if we'd be willing to sponsor that, and it was being ultimately hosted by a number of strong cyber security leaders that were women in this particular region. And so I said, well, let's not only do that, but let's bring in a panel. Let's not just do the competition. Let's bring in some women who are in leadership roles, because I think it's really important that these young girls hear their journey, hear the story. And so I think the other thing that I would offer here is, whether it's within the company, and Stephen's given some good examples and insights on that, it's also externally. And so I've sought out, I think this is that intentional conversation. I've sought out external parties that we can partner with. Maybe we can sponsor, whether it's a Raspberry Pi. And I want to make sure I'm not taking credit for this, because I was inspired by this gentleman was on my team. It was really, for me, it's like, wow, that's cool. You're doing that. Let's do that more. Because it's great, and I have to tell you, it's cheesy, but seeing the kids smile and have a great time and have a lot of fun with that was just extremely rewarding. So.
And what I'm hearing from all of this is, you don't have to be, just because I'm Latina doesn't mean I can only join the Conexión network. You can go ahead and branch out to any ERO that you want. And that's how you show up to be an ally. That is one of the ways you can show up, at least. And that brings me, I know we have 15 minutes left before our conversation ends. And one of the questions that I really just want to ask before we close out, because all good things must come to an end, is what are some actionable things people that are listening in to the audience can take? That way they can show up to be an ally or ask for allyship. Pam, if you want to start us off, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think you got to be open to different perspectives. You got to open your heart and your mind. And, I find myself registering myself more often than not. I have a lot of female friends that I'm surrounded by that I've built these connections throughout the country, and I'm never letting go. If they're watching today, they're probably like, oh. But I recently got some advice from some of them is, you can't, I'm a mom first, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm all of these things before I'm a professional. But when I'm a professional, I show up. When I'm your friend, I show up. When I'm your ally, I show up. And so I would just say to everybody out there, like, show up. Like, go to your girlfriends and ask them what they're reading. I just got a book, We Should All Be Millionaires, by Rachel Rogers, from one of my friend groups. And she has a podcast. It's amazing. And I love it. It's Hello Seven. I think it's Hello Seven Figures is what she's pushing for. But her perspective is amazing. And it's motivating. It's charging. Like, be around people that are charging you up, filling up your tank. Build those groups of people and go out there and do some good in the world, because we're all in this together and we need the perspectives. We need to be heard and we need to be seen.
Yeah. Go ahead, Veronica. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I love the charging your tank. I love that. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, and I agree, and I think the thing that I would encourage everyone to do, whether you're a man or a woman in the audience, is get a mentor, and it might be a man or a woman who's your mentor. I will be the first to tell you that I still have a lot to learn. This is a journey for me. I'm not at the end of it by any stretch of the imagination. I'm probably going to stumble again, and so I won't mention his name, but Pam knows who I'm talking about right now. Somebody that she may have worked with at one point in her life. But I'm going to ask him to be my mentor. I've seen him do things and say things that are just incredibly inspiring to me. And so I'm like, wow, that is really putting yourself out there. I mean, in a big group and asserting your position and advocating for women. And it hit me when I saw this note that he wrote, and I'm like, okay, well, I need to give this guy a call and see if he could teach me a thing or two. So I think that's, for me, that's a thing that I still need to work on, and I need to sort of hone that craft, as it were.
Daniel, just building off what you just said, because I've been there before. There's people that I want to ask to be my mentor, but it goes back to that I don't want to, hear no, or they might be too busy. So you mentioned that you're going to ask. One, like, what's been holding you back? And what are you thinking of saying, just for others that might need to ask for a mentor?
Well, so let me just start off by saying I used to be a sales guy, so I'm not used to accepting no. And so that's the first starting point. You always, you got to get the yes, you got to get the PO. So honestly, it's just it's been one of those things that's on my list. First of all, I know he's a terrifically busy individual, and I guess I would say that this is somebody I just met this year, and so we've been working on building our relationship, not only virtually, but I've had the privilege of meeting him now in person. So I kind of feel like I'm not quite there yet. Before I kind of spring it on him, I want to develop a bit more rapport, and then that, because I don't want him to see me as, right now I think although I think he sees me as a bit more than a vendor, I want him to see more as a professional colleague. And I think once I get to that level, then I'll feel confident enough. But believe me, I'm not bashful. Believe me, I will be asking him sometime soon. So it's definitely on the to-do list. But there are others, and I think a lot of this is just I confer with a bunch of other folks, and I don't know that I would necessarily formally call them mentors, but this is a topic that we talk about, and so it does come up in conversation, and you learn by osmosis from what others are doing. I mean, I've learned a ton from Stephen and Pam on this call alone, so you pick that up, and I think it's important. This gets back to being intentional. It's important to assimilate that and practice it, muscle memory. So hopefully that helps.
It does. And what stood out to me the most and that I really appreciate is that you said you haven't even had the relationship for a year. And I know that goes through a lot of people's heads when asking for a mentor. But the thing is, sometimes you meet people and you're like, wow, I want to be like them. How do I become like them? But I don't even know them that well yet. And that's just showing everybody on the call here that you just have to shoot your shot.
Yep.
And let us know how that goes. Stephen, ending with you, what are some actionable items that those on the call can do to become an ally or ask for allyship?
Yeah, I mean, in general, I would say continue to network wherever you can, because you will. I mean, your network is going to be one of your biggest drivers in your career. I'm stealing that quote almost directly from one of the vice presidents I work for. She said that on a call last week, but it's very true. It's very important to network wherever you can. You'll discover allies. You'll build your community. You will just help identify those potential mentors or sponsors, through networking. It's we talked about allyship networks. Again, if you have one available to you, seek that out. And again, if you want to be an ally, you can also consider either joining or starting an allyship network. Again, even through volunteering, I find myself building my network. We do. Our local chapter of Connected Black Professionals has sponsored Girl STEM days, where we've had, like 100 young girls come in and we teach about cybersecurity. And so when we do an event like that, this is before COVID, hopefully we'll be doing them again next year. The number of people who signed up to volunteer, it was inspiring. People from across the organization, all different backgrounds, were really interested in getting involved. So there's lots of ways that you can identify allies, potential allies, even just through volunteering efforts, either hosting, organizing, or participating. So another way that you can try.
Well, thank you all so much. You've answered all the questions in the chat. I would like to highlight what I think is very important with regards to showing up, especially in meetings, what Daniel mentioned. If someone is being interrupted, be that ally on the call and say, excuse me, Pam or Stephen, whoever it may be, hasn't finished. Or if you see someone else taking credit for someone else's idea, rather than take credit, be a collaborative team member and say, back to Pam's point, building off of Daniel's point, build that allyship. Thank you so much, all. I really appreciate your time. Any last words?
Act locally, go out there. And I was just thinking as Stephen was talking, what else could I be doing? And so I think I'm going to find a woman that might be a professional in cybersecurity or technology in my backyard, and we're going to go visit some schools. And we're going to talk about our roles, me as an ally, her as a technologist, or somebody in cyber. So, I mean, I think there's lots that we can do locally. Clearly, we're still in a virtual world mostly, but there's lots of opportunities for us all to get involved. And that's one of the things that I'm inspired about.
Love it.
Yeah, one of the, in Men for Inclusion, one of the points that we've often talked about is not necessarily declaring ourselves as allies, but letting our actions and behaviors and our advocacy drive that and let other people call us an ally if they see that from us. And so it's one of the things, that I think I sense it from everybody on this call is this real sincere intention and participation and just being here, showing up, as we said before.
Thank you all. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day today, and everyone that was in the audience that joined. As Stephen and Daniel and Pam mentioned, please feel free to reach out to them and connect with them on LinkedIn. If there's anything I can do as well, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Thanks all.
You're right there.
Thanks, Wysis.
See you.
Thank you, Isis. Yeah.